Hello there, Michael.
Hello.
My name's Lydia, and
Hello.
It's lovely to see you. I know that you sung at school, and I've been reading about you all your life, and singing came into that. Has singing ever inspired you to write? Has that ever kind of come into your books?
We saw singing, of course, in Warhorse on stage.
Yes, we did. I think it's difficult. It's come into my life, I think, much more than into my books. And it's sort of the same thing. I think what I have learned growing older is that you go on learning and you go on changing all the time. And singing to me is rather like books. I loved it when I was little. I was a choir boy. I looked unbelievably angelic in my surplice and cassock. And I was, choir leader. I sang solos. I loved it. I absolutely loved being in a choir. And I went to a school which had a fine musical tradition. I was in the choral society. I sang in operas and all the rest of it. And then I did what happened to so many people. I left school and I never sang again. And it's one of the great sadnesses in my life. But I didn't even know it was a sadness until much later on, when, as has just been said, there was this play of Warhorse which came on, which was full of these amazing folk songs. And it was so wonderful that I got these folk singers to make concerts with me of Private Peaceful, of Warhorse, of all sorts of things. Coop Boys and Simpson, they were called, or Voices at the Door, great folk singers. John Tams, who was the songmaster on the play of Warhorse, has been very influential in my life. And we've done lots and lots of concerts together. And I remember doing one concert, after about 3 or 4 times, one of them turned to me and said, "Michael, would you like to join in the last song?" Well, I know all the songs. So I thought, yeah. And so suddenly I'm stood there alongside these 6 fantastic a cappella singers, and we just do it. And I loved it. I just loved the feeling of your voice losing itself in this song, and you lose all sense of who you are. Your ego disappears out of the window. It's just this sound you're making, and you're doing it together with friends. And I'd just forgotten it. So then I felt really sad for the intervening 50 years when all I'd done was sing in the bath. So the truth is that yes, but I'm not sure I've written about it. I'm trying to think. I think in The Butterfly Lion I was a choir boy at the school. I'm not sure. But by and large I shall do that. Thank you. You will want royalties, I know. Well, you won't get any.
The next one's got to have songs in. Do you sing yourself then? Is that why you asked?
Yeah.
You sing in a choir?
Yes, I do, but I know you didn't enjoy school, and I didn't enjoy school, but I always sung, and so that's why I brought it up, just because it's something that we actually have in common, so that's why.
And do you sing now?
Yes.
I don't mean right this second, don't worry. I'm not going to make you suddenly sing, I promise. But it's wonderful that you still do it.
Do you know what? One thing you could do, which would be quite fun, in October, we're going to make a concert of Warhorse in the Albert Hall, in which there's going to be a huge 65-piece orchestra, and people are going to be reading the story, and they're going to be singers. And I am going to sing in the Albert Hall.
Wow. Wow.
But in amongst other people, so I won't be heard. So do come along and see me not being heard.
I will.
Sing along from the audience. Another question. I knew you'd have one, you see. I could tell. Wait for your microphone, and then you can ask Michael.
Why were you in...
No. Nice and quiet.
What's your name as well? Tell us your name.
Oh, I'm Callum.
Hi, Callum.
Hi. Why were you inspired by the Battle of Somme?
I wasn't so much inspired by the Battle of the Somme as by the whole war. And to answer your question seriously, it's this. I was born in 1943. Well, you won't know this, and it doesn't actually matter that much. But that was towards the end of another terrible war we call the Second World War. I didn't know anything about the Second World War, but I grew up in London just after it. So when I was your age, I was walking the streets of London, and it was a bombed place. And it was a sad place. And it was quite full of traumatized, sad people. I would go to the sweet shop at the end of my road, and there'd be some man sitting there on the pavement with a dog, with one leg, and his hat for you to put money in, and his medals. And you knew he'd been wounded somehow, but didn't really understand it. And then when we played in bomb sites, and that was fun. And we didn't really understand what a bomb site was, except that you weren't allowed to play in it, and that was fun. And then growing up, you suddenly noticed there was this photograph on the mantelpiece, and that was a black and white photograph of my uncle. And he was called Uncle Peter, and everyone spoke of him in a very strange and different way, in a quiet voice, because he was dead. And he was only 21 when he was killed in the RAF. And on his birthday, my mother cried all the time. And then there was November the 11th, and she would cry again for her long-lost brother. And she did this all the time I was growing up. So as I grew up, I began to realize what this war thing did to people. And then we'd have a friend who visited. And he was a friend of the family. And he would come in, and my mum always used to say to me, Michael, last time Eric came, you stared at him. And it's true, I always did. I stared at him because his face had been really badly burnt, and his eye was deep set in his head, and he had some fingers missing. And I knew he was a great hero. He'd been shot down in his plane and burnt. And as a small boy, I admired him as a hero, but I was also fascinated by his scars. And so I'd stare, which I knew I wasn't supposed to do. And every time she would say to me, Michael, do not stare this time. And Eric would sit down, and I would look at his shoes. And then my eyes would travel up to his waistcoat. He was a very smart man. To his watch chain. But didn't stop. They went up and up and up, and finally I was looking at his face again. And you know, later on in his life, I got to know him a bit. And he said he was really pleased that I did look at him, because an awful lot of people didn't. So you learn later a little bit about these things. But I did realize war was a terrible thing. And when you learn these things when you're young, you never forget them. So when later on I met a man who'd been to the First World War, I was interested in his experiences as a 17-year-old. And so I think I was led there by my own memories as a child, and by meeting people, reading poetry, reading novels, seeing plays. There was one called Oh, What a Lovely War, and others. And knew a bit about the First World War, but it wasn't until I met someone who'd actually been there that I knew this was rather like Eric, who I knew in my childhood. So that's why I write about war, but not particularly about the Somme. Okay.
Thank you, Callum, for that one. We have a young lady with a nice bow in her hair. There we go. A few rows back, just there. Keep putting your hand in the air. There we are. So what's your name?
My name's Lucy.
Well, hello, Lucy. Have you got a question for Michael?
Yeah.
Go for it.
In Private Peaceful, what inspired you to have Grandma Wolf?
Oh, that was an old auntie of mine. And I won't tell you any more. But there's always someone who inspires you. I had an auntie who was a bit fierce. So, here we are.
Do you write yourself? Do you write books? Do you write stories?
Sometimes.
And if you write your stories, do you get the characters from people that you know, or do they just come from your head?
Yeah, people I know.
Have you got any fierce aunties?
No.
They're really useful. I don't believe there's been any writer who was any good without a fierce auntie. Shakespeare had lots of fierce aunties.
Any more questions? Yes. Gosh, lots and lots of hands up. Let's go this side this time. There we are, another young lady here with her hand up, and then we'll go back to that side, I promise. What's your name?
Marsha.
Do you want to stand up, Marsha? Because I feel that you can't see Michael. There we are.
Okay.
Hello, Marsha.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
What would your main piece of advice be to writers? Type of thing?
You're not sure for writer advice?
Yeah, writers.
A builder? Plumber? No, just writers. Okay. Main piece of advice to writers, please.
Read a lot, really important. Live a lot. The first thing you have to do, I think, as a writer is to do those two things. But living is much more important. I think writers, in order to find something, to have something to write about, have to live a rich life. Which means what? It means meeting people. It means going places. It means using your eyes, your ears, your nose, your touch, but most particularly your feelings. What tends to happen to many of us as we grow older is that we put a cloak around us very often to protect ourselves from the world about us. Cloaks are very difficult to see through, and it's very difficult for stuff to get through cloaks at you. What writers have to do is to remain vulnerable to the world, not cover themselves up. So when things are hurtful, you be hurt. When things are funny, you roar with laughter. You remain in contact with the world. That's really, really important. And then at a certain point in time, what will happen is that you'll begin to select what it is that you care about. Because finally, when you write, all that matters is you're writing about what you care about. I can only tell you what I do. I don't write to entertain you. I really don't. I love it if you like one of my books, but that is not why I write the book. I write it because the characters in it interest me, the subject of it I'm passionate about, and it matters to me. That seems to me where writing should come from. It's the way I communicate to you. So as I'm speaking to you now, I'm not pretending anything. I'm telling you, I'm looking you in the eye, and a book should look you in the eye. And when you read it, if it's sad, you are going to be sad. It's going to take you to a dark place, then it's going to take you to a dark place. And if when you finished it, you wonder about it, well, that is what I do when I write it. So it's not a comfortable profession to be in, and it shouldn't be that comfortable, really. Are you thinking of writing later on? Well, all I would urge you to start doing now is to write 2 or 3 lines a day, not to show to anyone at all, in order to remember what it is that's the most important thing that happens in your day. Whatever it is, write it down. 2 lines, not a big deal. And hold those things in your head and your heart, and bit by bit, something wonderful will happen. You will learn to write as easily as you speak. One of the problems that young people have is that they think writing is a school exercise. It's not. It's just like speaking, except we don't do it as easily. The more you write, the more easily it comes, and you'll find your own voice, your own way of telling a tale, which will not be Roald Dahl's way, J.K. Rowling's way, my way, Shakespeare's way. It'll be your way, and you'll tell your tale about the world as you see it. Okay, so that's my advice, and it'll cost you £5. Sit down.
Very good advice. There we go. Thank you. When you're completely involved in a book and you know those characters and you're speaking, you're thinking their thoughts, your heart is their heart. When you close that book, is it hard? And I mean, when you finish it and send it off to the publishers, is it hard to let those people go? Because all of the books of yours I've read, and you know what a fan I am, I find it very difficult to let them go. And you, as that person, as that voice, as that heart, as that soul, do you find it equally difficult to let them go?
I suppose I do, but I'm so relieved to have finished it. I don't say goodbye to them because I know I'm going to revisit it. I mean, the truth is, when you send it off to your publisher or your agent, it's going to be a series of edits, of going back to it and revisiting it and trying to sharpen it up. And I don't like that part of it necessarily, because that takes me back to school when a teacher says...
That's semicolon.
Yeah, semicolon time. But it's fine, it's got to be done, it's got to be done. I mean, the really interesting thing is that very often once you've written a book and you put it to one side and it's done and there it is, by that time you're into another book and you're into another character, and that's become the center of your life. And because I've been writing so long, I have many families that I've created, many men heroes, boy heroes, girl heroes, woman heroes, and they've been part of my life. They still are. There's a rather wonderful book which is just about to be published on the 1st of July. I say it's wonderful because it's just a lovely idea. It's my brother, Mark, who isn't here sadly, He's still alive, but he's not here. And Mark, he's my younger brother, and he comes occasionally to talks I give like this. And he came up to me after one I did in Edinburgh, and he said, Michael, I discovered something about these events that you do. Most of the children here ask roughly the same question, roughly, which is, what made you write such and such a book? How did it start? And he said, I don't like to say this, Michael, but I've heard you give the same answer time and time and time again. Isn't it about time that we made a book together where we took, say, the 20 novels of yours which seem to be read most, and you write down, just a couple of thousand words about why it is, how did you get into this book? And I write, he was looking for a job for himself, basically, because he's fascinated by facts. He's a great historian, he loves delving back into family history and that sort of thing. And Mark said, I will write the history behind each one. So, for instance, I wrote a book called Listen to the Moon, which is all about the sinking of the Lusitania and the survival of a girl from the Lusitania. And so I wrote the inspiration to it, which was a Lusitania medal, which my wife Claire found when she was a little girl. And so I talked about the finding of that, and then my finding that, and finding out about the Lusitania, and about the Scilly Isles where it's set, and all the rest of it. And he wrote the history of it, and then my wife, Claire, chose an excerpt from the book. So it's a family book. And on the cover, and the reason I'm telling you this, I can hold it up now, and I'm not selling you the book because they're not allowed to sell it yet. So isn't that a change, a writer not selling you a book? Here it is. It's whose 400th anniversary of death year is this? What kind of minor English writer are we talking about? Yes, Shakespeare. He wrote a wonderful line, which I think is in The Tempest, and it's such stuff as dreams are made on. So I call this book Such Stuff, and it's really about the stuff that is behind every single book. And in the front of it, this is why I'm mentioning it, it's about, that's me in the red jacket with the hat, going out with a butterfly net, catching dreams. And so every dream that you catch and you tell a story sort of replaces the one before. I'm married to my books, but I've got about 138 wives. You understand?
Does Claire know?
I haven't told her yet.
Okay. Next question. I promised somebody over here. Yes, there we are.
Sorry. I work in year 4 with my friend here, and our class have asked us to ask you a question, which we will then report back to them.
Have you got your phone? Do you have your phone with you? You could record the answer. Oh. And then the school will hear it. The kids will actually hear Michael's voice.
That would be amazing. Thank you. That's such a good idea.
Do you
so
mean
my friend's going to film.
Is it going to be visual?
Yes, can it be? You're going to video it? Okay.
Is that okay?
Do you want to come closer? Then you can get a come on.
Go on, Charlotte.
He doesn't bite, I promise.
Sorry, so Charlotte's their teacher and I'm the TA.
I don't believe that what's going on.
So what's your class called?
So it's 4C.
4C.
At Crome Road School. And they wanted...
Where is this? Where is this?
In Barnet, North London.
Yes, I know where Barnet is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they wanted to know why you chose to write so many of your wonderful books from the perspective of their animal.
Hello? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Hello. From a perspective of an animal. Okay. I live on a farm. I'm surrounded by animals, not by people. That's the first thing to say. So I know animals quite well. And like a lot of people, I've had pets. So I'm not remarkable. I'm not a David Attenborough. I don't know animals very well. And you know what interests me much, much more than anything else? Is not the animals, this is when the children start hating you, but the relationship between ourselves and animals. That's what I'm fascinated by. So actually, when there's an animal there, whether it happens to be a horse or a dog, and if it is from the perspective of an animal, it's because of how we interact with them. I wrote a book once called Born to Run, about has anyone read it? Would you put your hands up if you have? Yeah, well, that's not enough. Anyway, Born to Run is about a greyhound. And it's really about how cruelly some greyhounds are treated. War Horse is written because we've used horses in the way we've used them, and they've suffered as a result. But what I also know is the comfort that animals can bring to people and people can bring to animals. So it is that relationship that interests me more than anything, the one that should develop between our fellow sentient creatures and ourselves, which is to do with coexistence, with friendship, with trust. So I've written a lot, for instance, in recent years about elephants. And partly it is because of the Just So stories when I was young. I know that. But it's also because they are under threat in so many places. And the places they live very often are under threat. So I just did there's a play just been on in Regent's Park called Running Wild, which is all about an elephant and a boy in the Indonesian jungle, and it's about tigers, and it's about orangutans, and it's about the destruction of the rainforest. It's obvious why I'm writing it. It's about how we constantly now dominating the world and cutting into their living space and destroying them, so that by the time he is my age, you ask yourself, will there be any orangutans in the wild, tigers in the wild, elephants in the wild? And unless the good people, and there are good people of course, protect them, leave their forests standing, stop planting more palm oil trees and more palm oil trees so that we can have our toothpaste and our peanut butter. Unless we stop the greed that we have, then we destroy them. So it is this relationship that interests me more than anything else. If you could tell your children that, I'd be very pleased.
Hallelujah to what you just said. And the more that you young people learn about what Michael's just talked about, maybe we can do something about saving this incredible planet and those amazing animals. Who's got another question? Right at the back, and it's tough being at the back. You're waving, yes. He's coming over now with a microphone for you. Do you want to stand up as well, because you really are quite far back? What's your name?
Matteo.
Hello, Matteo.
Hi.
You got a question?
Yeah.
Go for it.
How can you write a book without knowing what a semicolon is?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
How can you write a book without not knowing what a semicolon is?
Oh dear. What are you trying to do? Humiliate me? Well, I'll tell you why. They don't matter that much. They really do not. You're not standing there going to defend semicolons till the day you die, are you? I mean, here's the problem. We are taught, are we not, a lot of really important things at school. Of course, we got to learn how to spell, and we got to learn to put... I'll ask you a question. Since you're being challenging to me, I'll challenge you back. Do you know why teachers tell you to put full stops at the end of sentences? Come on, answer the question.
So it shows...
You don't, do you? You've got no idea at all. Well, I'm about to tell you. Teachers tell you to put a full stop at the end of the sentence, because if you don't stop to breathe, you die. That's the reason. You tell me what use is a semicolon? Half a breath? I don't know. I mean, no, the truth is the spelling's important, the punctuation's important, of course it is, but if you do teach that first, if you get children all worried about semicolons and commas, do you come from the Gove family? you do, don't you?
No.
No, he's a guy, he was Minister of Education once before he went and became a sort of a judgy person. But the truth is, of course, they're important. I'm not going to mock them, but they almost destroyed me as a person who loves words, because if all you learn are the rules, then you forget the music in the words. Do you understand what I'm saying? And all I'm saying is that the music is quite important. You can go on thinking semicolons are important if you like. We'll shake hands afterwards. Maybe.
I love the way everybody was nodding along with you there. Thank you very much, Matteo. Okay, we've got another question. Yes, right down here at the front. There, you have to run now, Paul. There we go. What's your name?
My name's Cassius.
Hello, Cassius.
Did you ever have another inspirational writer, just someone to look up to when you were writing a book?
I have two inspirational writers still in my life because they never leave your head. One was the first writer I ever read a book in which I identified really strongly with one character. It's a man called Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island. And there's a character in a book called Treasure Island called Jim Hawkins, who was about the age I was when I read the book. And I loved that book because it's so well written, because the characters you think are interesting and attractive turn out to be the most dastardly villains in the world. And that was interesting. He was wonderful at describing landscape and character. But you know the main reason why I liked him, age 9, is because you read Treasure Island and there are no girls in it. And at the age of 9, girls were of no interest to me whatsoever. In fact, they frightened me half to death. So I did not want them in the books that I read. But then I grew up and I appreciated what a wonderful writer he was, because he writes travel books, he writes serious novels for grown-ups, he writes poems. The man was just amazing. He died far too young, many years ago now. And then there's another writer called Ted Hughes, who is a great poet. You've probably read The Iron Man, and I'm sure read one or two of his poems. So in my head and my heart, I would love to be a writer who has the storytelling power of Robert Louis Stevenson and the poetic power, the power of the magic of words, the music of words of Ted Hughes. I'd like to combine those two things and be the greatest writer in the world.
Many people think that you absolutely are, absolutely. Any more questions? Oh, look, yes, that young lady with right at the back who's practically doing a dance because she wants to ask a question. How old are you?
I'm 7.
You're 7, and do you have a name?
Yeah,
What is it?
Polly.
Hello, Polly. Have you got a question for Michael? Yes? Do you want to have a think about it?
Yeah.
Okay, have a think. While you're thinking about it, in fact, do you feel that you're a bit far away, Polly? Would you like to come up here, Polly? Come up here and ask it, because it is ridiculously far away. Would you want to come with your sister? Is that your sister with you? Right, come on then. Come on then, Polly. You can come up here. Oh, 3 of you. Okay, come up here. Come on. Polly, you sit in that seat. There we go. You sit there. You've got your sisters with you. Right. With your I'm in badge. Now, what would you like? He's right there.
We
Look.
promised we wouldn't get into that,
Yes.
too.
Right, he's right there, so you can turn to him.
Polly.
There we are. And put the microphone up to your mouth.
Yep.
Maybe I'll hold you. How about if I do that? There we are. What would you like to ask? Do you want to ask? Do you want to tell me first?
What's your favourite book that you wrote?
Very good question. Very good, Polly.
Okay, Polly, it's really difficult because I like them all, because I wrote them all, so I'm very fond of them all. But I would say to you that generally speaking, the books that are loved by the people I love are the ones I love best. I will explain. I have a wife who I quite like, and she loves a book called War Horse. Now, when this book came out, have you read War Horse? Right. When this book came out, which was a long time ago in 1982, way before you or your mother was born, a long time ago, 1982, it didn't do very well. But she loved it. She said, this is a wonderful book. And then I wrote more books. I've written about 80 books ever since, okay? And what I do with the manuscript when I've written it is I give it to her to read. And she reads it, and I go out for the day. And then I come back and I say, well, what do you think? What do you think? Do you like it? And she goes, sometimes, yep, it's not bad, but it's not as good as War Horse. And sometimes I'll come back and I say, what do you think? What do you think? She says, it's really good, it's fantastic. I say, as good as War Horse? No. So, Polly, I'm here to tell you something. It's really upsetting. I'm here to tell you something. Later on in life, it's likely you will have a partner of one sort or another. You'll have a partner. When you are choosing your partner, make sure you choose someone who flatters you, who says what you want them to say. You do not want argumentative people who tell the truth. Off you go, Polly. Bless your heart. Off you go.
Thank you very much. Give her a round of applause. That was very brave with her sisters as well. Yes, let's have one happy question. Who wants to... First person to stand up now with a happy question.
Michael, can you tell us about your work regime, your writing regime? Do you get an idea and then plan the next month? Do you have a particular place where you like to start?
Yeah, I will tell you that. It's quite happy, really. I work on my bed, which is really good because you can fall asleep at any time you like. And the reason why I write on my bed is a good story. It's because I get quite a pain in my wrist and my arm from repeatedly writing and writing and writing. And I was very lucky, I lived very close to a good friend of ours, Ted Hughes, and I was telling him about the problem I was having writing, and he said, Michael, he said, you don't want to sit at a desk and write, you don't want to do that. He said, you want an easel, you should stand at an easel like a painter. That's what I do. And so he took me up to his writing place, and there was this easel, and he was standing there, and there was his manuscript, and he stood, and I thought, well, what's good for the poet laureate is good for me. So I got myself an easel, and I went and stood in front of the easel, and I started writing, and my feet hurt. That didn't work either. So I could not get comfortable, and then I was reading a biography of Robert Louis Stevenson, and I saw this amazing photograph of him on his bed on the island of Samoa towards the end of his life. And he was lying on this bed with his knees drawn up in front of him, pillows piled up behind him, and a notebook on his lap. And he was writing. And I thought, the man who wrote Treasure Island did it on his bed. I will do the same thing. And I'm here to tell you, it's by far the best place, because your arms are relaxed, you're supported everywhere. Yes, and you can go to sleep when it's not working, which is quite often. So, my regime is hopeless. I have one thing that makes me write, and that's a contract. And I don't mean this in a superficial way. Of course, I quite like being paid. It's just that when you promise someone a story, and you sign the piece of paper, it's sort of like handing your homework in. It's a bit like that. And I was used to doing that at school, and I need that obligation to get on with it. I'm very lazy. I put stuff off all the time. So if I say I'm going to do a book, then I do it. But even then, I don't write all day. I just get up in the morning, write for 3 or 4 hours. I do about 1,000, 2,000 words in the morning, lying on my bed. In the afternoon, I'll read it through. And if I'm happy at the end of the day, it means it was all right. And then I have a lovely daughter who can interpret my horrible scribbles, because I write by hand all the time still. And she puts it on a computer and sends it to me. It comes through the air somehow. I don't know how that works. But it ends up from her computer into my... I do not understand. How does that work? Anyway, then I fiddle around with it. And then I send it off to my publisher, who I know is here. And he looks at it and he'll say, quite good, but could be better. And then he sends it back and says, here's how you can make it better. And then I try to make it better. And then, a year later, you young ones, listen. Through the post comes a new book. And it's just like having a baby. It's wonderful. It's mine. And it's better than a baby, because this baby has your own name on it. Isn't that... Were you born with your name written all over you? You weren't, were you? It's very disappointing for your mother. So that's how I do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Michael Morpurgo.